morning, Malcolm Nance.
Good morning. You know, I've read the news today.
Oh, boy. I read the news today. Oh, boy. I have to tell you, every time a new Mueller indictment drops or Russia news, I rush to your Twitter feed. What does Malcolm say? So you tweeted, my best assessment on this new Mueller indictment. They think Manafort is a paid Russian agent. They are scrubbing all his past relationships with pro-Moscow persons and indicting everyone who lies. Manafort is in serious trouble, maybe even Espionage Act trouble. Oh, my goodness, Malcolm.
Well, I mean, he's been naughty.
You know, I'm not an expert like you, but it just seems like there's an awful lot of people lying to the FBI.
Oh, geez. You know, I've said it 1,000 times. You have two options when the FBI come to you. You can lie or go to prison. And we're going to see now this new firewall has been set up. What I find wonderful about the indictment that we had from van der Zwaan was that it appears that Mueller is going completely back to the very beginning of Russia's relationship with Manafort, and that the person A and organization A, of which they had a copy of the email and wanted van der Zwaan to turn over, clearly had to be a link to the Kremlin. And the lawyer decided it was better to lie to the FBI than to let his father-in-law, who is a Russian oligarch, get thrown under the bus and show the direct link between Moscow, Rick Gates, and Paul Manafort.
Yeah.
And, when we come and ask you a question, we already know the answer.
Well, again, Malcolm, it doesn't take a legal expert or an intelligence expert like you to go, innocent people don't lie to the FBI this much. Right? I mean, how many guilty for lying to the FBI pleas do we have already? I mean, it's... Yeah. So let's talk about, so people that don't know this. So it's a London-based attorney pled guilty. Right. You tweeted yesterday it's going to be Who Dat Day in Mueller indictments. Wait a minute, who's this guy now?
It was.
Yeah, Alex van der Zwaan admitted to lying to Bob Mueller's investigators and FBI agents about his contacts with former Trump campaign associate and another person who we don't know who that is, about his work for a Ukrainian politician. The attorney was hired by Paul Manafort more than 5 years ago to draft a report for his pro-Kremlin client, Viktor Yanukovych, to justify the jailing of a political rival. There's even a lock her up in this story. And this is his father-in-law, as you said, was named in the Steele dossier. Van der Zwaan's father-in-law pled guilty to lying about the last time he's spoken with Rick Gates and a second unnamed person. Do we have any idea who this second unnamed person is?
No, but the very fact that they're an unnamed person and they're associated with this story means that they are either a member of possibly a member in the Kremlin, who they have identified as some form of liaison officer, or it's going to be, someone in the Yanukovych government. My money is based on the way that they're attacking this. They're charging this guy like it's really important for you to know, all right, that we are tracking this down. If this was inconsequential, you would not get a charge. What you would get is a slap on the wrist and probably just go with the information that they had. They think this is vital to bringing a case against Manafort, that at his earliest days, he worked for the Yanukovych government to help write a document which would have the effect of continuously jailing Yulia Tymoshenko, who is the Hillary Clinton of the Ukraine. She led the Orange Revolution, which the Russians hate. They hate those color revolutions, those pro-West revolutions with a white-hot passion. Manafort did something dirty, and the dirty is a link either directly to the Kremlin itself or directly to Russian intelligence. My money is on part two.
Yeah, well, Malcolm, that's what a lot of people are saying is Paul Manafort didn't end up as Trump campaign manager for free, for no salary, by accident, right? This has been his past, is installing these pro-Putin despots in dirty elections, right?
You're absolutely right. You're right. And let me tell you, there's only one. You're absolutely right. There was only one reason to put him in that position. People say that he was down on his luck. He wasn't having a lot of a pull in the Republican Party. They recommended him because he was an old pro. He dressed like Trump. He acted like, a mafia wartime consigliere, and that's the reason they had him. No, he volunteered himself. He had to have volunteered himself to work for free, not just because he would be next to the levers of power, but he was probably already aware years ago that Moscow had put their finger on Trump and that Trump was going to be their candidate, and they wanted an American who had already worked with him, who had benefited from Moscow's largesse, who may have earned as much as $70 freaking million, right?
Yep.
To make sure that Donald Trump facilitated their wishes and raised those sanctions. And I think that was his mission. And now that I'm finishing this week the sequel to Plot to Hack America, this Russian plan is real, it's insidious, and it is American and European wide. As a matter of fact, the Americans, we're last at getting Trump to flip for Moscow. We're the last country that they tried to do that to.
Yeah.
So the rest of Europe is aflame with these neo-Nazi and pro-Moscow governments. And if it hadn't been for Emmanuel Macron, liberal democracy in Europe would have ended in 2016.
Yeah.
So early 2017. So Manafort is neck deep in this. And I think that Mueller knows every bit about it. But the way that you get him, what's that old English phrase, softly, softly, catchy monkey, right? You have to go back to the origins of when this man first became an asset or an agent for Russian intelligence or the Kremlin itself. Because I don't want to use those two things interchangeably. There's a big difference. But if you're working personally for Putin, well, you essentially work for Russian intelligence.
Yeah.
So by going back to the very origins of this, they're going to scrape through every damn dollar. From that point to 2016, and they can indict them on every one of them as separate charges.
So if you had to guess, now that Gates has flipped, is Manafort going to flip? That's the big question.
Oh, jeez. Well, they're gonna, to make Manafort flip, you have to show him that tsunami of indictments that's over his head.
Yeah.
He'll probably say, well, Gates will flip, but he'll, with his lawyer, he won't say anything. It's different when you come back and say, and we don't need Rick Gates, because all he did was lead us to your paper money trail, and we now know that you are an intelligence asset, a paid agent of the Russian Federation, and we're going to knock your butt up for espionage charges.
Yeah.
Now, at that point, everybody flips, because there's no way you'll ever get a pardon on an espionage charge.
Yeah. Malcolm, any idea on Earth why Jared Kushner doesn't have a security clearance?
Why he still has it? Why he doesn't have one? Yeah,
yes.
He's if I can use NATO phonetics, he's dirty Alpha Foxtrot, right? He's got. This is a guy who admitted through his lawyers that he went to the Russians and asked for secure communications back channel in their embassy. Boom, no clearance. He is reading classified information in the presidential daily briefing because Donald Trump has personally authorized him to do it. And this is what I said on television last week. Donald Trump should just admit, or McMaster should get the president or Kelly to admit that he is there at the sufferance of Donald Trump, not according to the security clearance process, which means Donald Trump will be responsible if it turns out that he is a paid agent of the Kremlin, right?
Yeah.
Or if it turns out he's in debt to the Kremlin and that he's reading all these PDBs and through inference or wink and a nod, information is getting to our enemies. Because as far as I'm concerned, the minute that report came out about him talking to the Russians, anyone else in U.S. government would have been immediately thrown into a room and polygraphed relentlessly until you either confess or until other information comes in. Kushner has the son-in-law treatment.
Yeah. Malcolm, you always say the target's getting buggy. Based on the Twitter storm of this last weekend and the level of gaslighting yesterday from Sarah Sanders saying, what did she say? Oh, that Trump has been much tougher on Russia than Obama, and that Trump never said that Russia didn't meddle in the election. I mean, the gaslighting has been turned up to 11, hasn't it?
Oh, geez, we're past gaslighting. Okay, this is like Blade Runner, where the entire horizon is flares of gas, right? This is a natural gas field. It's like an Azerbaijan midnight. So these people think we're stupid.
Yep.
That's the part that really gets me. They are well into the former communist style disinformation of saying black is white, and you will believe that it's white because we say it's white. I'm sorry, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is no better than a weak, torn up, yellowed copy of Pravda, because really you cannot believe a word out of her mouth. There is nothing that comes out of it that's true, and I don't understand why journalists of good faith don't just say, "Whoa, sorry." You can't come in here and lie to us like that.
Right.
Even if, she tried it yesterday, the whole, Obama's done nothing. And no one says anything.
Demonstrably false.
They ask one question, boom.
Yeah. By the way, there was this interview with this, Trumper woman that, did not want to believe that she was obviously involved with, Russian targeting, right, of, Russian activists. And you said this is a perfect example of the success of the Russians marionetting Trump voters. Perception management works.
Yes. And I want to give you guys a preview onto my book. I studied all of the NATO manuals on Russian intelligence. There are dozens and dozens of theses and documents that come from the Russians themselves on how they do information warfare. And they initially called this strategy of controlling a person's belief system in the world. They used to call it reflexive control. And then in the mid-2000s, they started referring to it as perception management strategy. And it's brilliant. They literally control a bubble of information around you. The communists were masters of this, right? Remember how in the Soviet Union, the West was poor and everybody had to, wore clogs? And, if you went over there, the United States was this destitute, racist nation.
Yeah.
Well, they have managed to use the internet to imprint the perceptions they have developed using propaganda, psychological warfare onto Trump voters. And what you see is they project, like cruise missiles, these ideas. Hillary Clinton is a sinner. And all these horrible things. Well,
people, I think it's base. People don't want to feel like they're duped. I mean, people have been talking about, Jill Stein being unhinged, and defensive on TV this week. Ari Melber did a great segment about how, even Bernie is not like admitting how early they got involved in the primary, to help him.
I have 600 Stein voters that commented on my tweet where I said Jill Stein was essentially a fellow traveler of Russia. And I've said this for the last 2 years. Look, when the Russian Green Party writes to her and says, you are being duped by Putin, okay? You're going to destroy your ecology with Donald Trump. You might want to listen.
Yeah.
But she didn't listen. She was in it for herself. Stein voters were in it for themselves. They did give them a margin. Her and Bernie Sanders write-ins essentially threw this election to Donald Trump. But then again, they were co-opted, or not Bernie so much, but Jill Stein was co-opted by the Russians very early.
Yeah.
I mean, her little dinner with Vladimir Putin wasn't an accident. They're co-opting of the extreme left, and giving TV shows on Russia Today to guys like Ed Schultz and others was their way of playing ourselves, both sides, against us.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I have been screaming it from the rooftops for I don't know how long. You did a hashtag hijack, MMAGA, Mueller, Making America Great Again. Very nice, sir.
Oh, you guys need to get on to that. All right? I want to see that hashtag trend today. Hashtag MMAGA, right?
Yeah.
Mueller Making America Great Again should be, I don't know why, every person, whenever you tweet, put that on there.
Yep.
Okay? Because if you think about it, and I saw someone had sent a little picture, and it was a picture of Robert Mueller and the American flag, and it said, Mueller is making America great again. I thought, liberals can play some psychological warfare themselves.
There you go.
Okay.
We got Trump colluded trending this week, so we can do this too.
There you go.
Yeah, and finally, before you go, I have to say, you tweeted about, I know what sort of hit all our hearts is this ROTC kid that got the full, military funeral from West Point and the letter of acceptance. That's where he wanted to go. But you just said, hooah to West Point, USMA, for showing your nation what a respectful, dignified gesture from our future warrior leaders look like. I'm proud of this simple act. It's an homage to your motto of duty, honor, country. We needed this. The long gray line delivered. Thank you from America. Yeah, I mean, that's like you say, this should not be partisan anymore, whether it's Russia and all the stuff that you've been doing, or this gun debate, right?
Well, we always make fun of kids and, the younger millennials and whatever they're calling the kids, the younger generation these days, the kids who are on my lawn. But these guys, God bless them. Those three young, JROTC kids risked their lives to save their fellow classmates. And the kids who are speaking out right now, I'm floored at the eloquence and depth of their passion. And unfortunately, it took the mass murder of their classmates in order for us to hear this generation. But I think they're going to be heard. They're a march for life, or for, I can't remember the name of the
and Malcolm,
that
it's
march. It's going to be brilliant.
Yeah, every story connects, though, right? It's Russian bots pushing pro-gun memes, and trolling these poor kids. I mean, we're in a fight for the soul of our country.
We are, and I'm sorry, let's start the clock right now. I think it's 289 days. This next election, and certainly, I mean, I've just finished this book, The Plot to Destroy Democracy, and no, that wasn't a plug. I'm freaking terrified.
I know.
I'm not joking. I have been in combat numerous times. I survived 9/11. Nothing frightens me as much as this strategy that the Russians put in. 2016 and 2017 was supposed to have been the end of democracy in Western Europe and the United States. And the only thing that saved us was Francois Macron. His election was it. If Marine Le Pen had won in France, she would have dismantled NATO with Trump, broken up the European Union, and shifted Western Europe to a Russia-centric world. I mean, it was that damn close.
Yep.
And now the guardrails of democracy are holding in America, and this election is an existential election. American experience that is since 1776 will live or die with the coming election.
Yep, absolutely. Malcolm, always a pleasure, sir, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right.
All right, there he goes. Wow. He doesn't scare easy. Let me just tell you. I know. Now you're you've hidden in your shirt, Jody. That's okay.